Here we are, testing out a prototype for the Go Sky spotting scope, 20 to 60 by 60 millimeter. Went ahead and printed this out myself. It's nothing elegant to look at, but it's doing a pretty dang good job. Here's the GoPro 7 that we were looking at here on that video. Just your basic model. So this one's a little bit easier, I believe, than the Hero Black 8, just because I think the Hero Black 8 tapers in at one point, so I don't know how well this would work for any other models, but because this one's fairly basic, it's not that hard to go ahead and create something for it. So what I used is this caliper here, and I think I got this one off of Amazon. Nothing too fancy. You can get stuff like this here at Harbor Freight and Tool if you really wanted to. So it's saying that from this side to here, it's about 32 millimeters, more or less, depending on how far you want to roll it. But just for simplicity's sake, we're going to go ahead and call it 32. And then for here, we had probably about 29 is probably saying a little bit too liberal, but if you really wanted to get super complicated, you could probably just say 28.75, or even maybe just 29. You can see it is extremely loose if it's at 29, whereas at 28.75, it's got a little bit more grip to it. Now the design that I made isn't that elegant. It involved a circle, a square, and an oval. Well, sphere, disc, whatever. Combine three shapes in one, make it a little easier for me to grab right here, but make it basic enough that I can put the GoPro right in it. And this one, it does fit one way. As you can see here, it does fit fairly snug. Hopefully the camera picks it up pretty well. Fits in fairly snug that it doesn't come out. So I tried it here as close as I could, but again, this was only a prototype. Didn't even think that it was going to work as well as it is. And it's been doing really, really good. But there's a couple of different ways that you can make this, but this was just mine, and I actually made it in, oh, is that Windows 3D? It was just super, super basic, and I'll go ahead and show you in a little bit what that was. But the original piece that I was using was something that a friend had made for me. He found this on Thingiverse. Now, the only thing I didn't care about this is that it did come in multiple parts. It is a lot compared to a little. Yes, it looks cool. This one goes directly onto the GoPro itself. This one adheres really, really well as well. I think actually a little too much. So it's kind of difficult, but it does look really, really slick how they made it. It's nice that you can go ahead and just have it like this. So if this is attached to your spotting scope, you can go ahead and put it on, latch it in. When you're ready to take it off, you're done. Mine's just one piece that goes on, comes off. The only thing I didn't care about this is that when I did go ahead and try to attach it, it had a lot of give. Now, my friend printed out and he didn't have all the specs specifically for it, and we were just trying to use this plastic cover that was on top of my spotting scope. And this actually pops right off, so it didn't make too much sense to use this on it the whole time, just because it's, if you try to pull it off, this whole thing comes off, and yeah, anyways. So yeah, it works. I didn't care for it. I think this fits the Hero Black 5, Hero 5 Black, and they're all pretty much interchangeable. I think there was just a slight size difference in this, but pretty much the same. So, but what I ended up doing, instead of using this, which I didn't care for having on my spotting scope, either one of them I had when I put them on here, It's not like it just fits on and the camera lens is perfectly crisp and clear. It does take some finagling to go ahead and kind of move it around just to go ahead and get it to line up properly. It's almost like the same using your phone if you're trying to get it to look through binoculars and get it to look all clear. It's just that certain angle, moving it and getting it in and out, which this made it kind of difficult with that. Whereas this, I designed it to be around just this plastic. It's something that it adhered to a lot better. I didn't have as many problems with it. Now this one came out to be about 41.63. Obviously all the way around. And depending on where you put this, 41.92. It does fit rather snug, but it's very, very small, and if I do need to turn it, and I can maneuver it just a little bit in and out, but it's very, very small, low key platform, and that just fits right on it. And it doesn't take up too much weight like a phone case would, that I was having some issues on with this spotting scope and the original tripod. This made it just enough that I could actually move it however I wanted to, and then I could go ahead and tighten in the pieces, and I didn't have to really worry about it rolling or pitching or anything like that. But let's go ahead and jump into the program. Just go ahead and show you a little bit about how I was making that. And here we are in 3D Builder. This is for Microsoft. I'm just going to go ahead and take a couple spins to go ahead and look at the creation. If you'll notice that you'll be seeing that there are some small little cylinders here on the side of the cap. This just kind of helps ensure that there's a proper connection to the GoPro and the actual mount, in case there's just any wiggle room. But we'll go ahead and open up a new thing real quick and show you exactly how it's made. This example really only took me about 15 minutes to make, but I'll go ahead and just make it really, really short and easy for you. Of any shape or size that you would like. You can move it up, down, left, or right, just all depending on the size that you want. So you can do this all manually, or you can actually go ahead and give it a specific exterior size right here and just enter in the value. All these values are in millimeters. I think you can change it to be in inches, but millimeters is just a little bit more precise that you can work with, and that's just generally how these programs are dialed in, is through that. But you can convert the sizes that you need, or if you have that protractor, you can actually get a specific millimeter size, and it's just a little bit easier to work with that way instead of trying to convert the units. Here we're just going to cycle through a couple of the tabs just so that way you can kind of see and be a little more familiar to what we are looking at. First thing that we're going to want to do is go ahead and start creating the hole in the middle of where the scope is going to be seated. So you'll want to go ahead and duplicate your project. It's just a little easier this way than trying to create one from scratch, just because you already kind of have the same dimensions. We do want to go ahead and make it smaller. Again, for this example, I'm just kind of punching in random numbers, but you'll want to put in the specific value that you need, so that way this will fit over your project. So the current grayed out function that you're seeing on the bottom is the actual height adjustment and width adjustment. If you forget the setting is on there, it can tamper with the actual size of it, but you can use Control-Z to go ahead and back out. The current setting now that you see there is the move function. Anytime that you do move it, it usually tries to snap it into place. Basically what that means is it generally will go ahead and, if you're close enough to the different axes, it'll go ahead and try to push it into where you need it to. So that way it kind of seats it automatically and you don't have to try to dial it in specifically by hand. So you'll want to go ahead and select the inside sphere for this next part to go ahead and hollow it out. I typically like to go ahead and change the height on it just so that way it's a little bit bigger than what the current one that you're working on. So you can see there's just a little bit of a lip here. I just find that works a little bit easier for me. So you'll want to go ahead and select the object that you want, and then we hit subtract. What that does is completely hollow it out, and it removes the piece that you were just using, and then you're left with the current project. If you have any kind of question about how big a specific piece is, interior, exterior, you can go here to that measure function, and on the top left side you can actually see exactly how big that area is. So if you need to change something like that in the future, you can, but it's just a nice reference in case you need to look at some details. Now we're going to go ahead and start working on our frame. So you'll want to go to Insert and under Cube and generate what you want. Set that off to the side. And we just want to make sure that it's settled, because sometimes it does place it on top of the current object you're working on. So by settling it, it just pushes it down to the bottom of the mat, and then you can go ahead and start adjusting the height to whatever thing that you need. Change the height of the cube to be however deep that you need it to be, and then you can adjust the exterior width as well, so that way it's just wide enough so you can compensate for carving out the inside of where the GoPro lens is going to be. You don't want it to be too thin. You can make it as wide as you want. For this one, I just oversized it, and we'll actually shrink it down here in a minute, so that way it looks a little bit more relevant to the size of the scope. Now we're going to duplicate our square, so that way we can cut out the inside and match it up for our GoPro. Again, this is just a random number that I'm going to be putting in here just to be able to show you how you can make that. Once you've got your values entered in, just go ahead and move it over. It should snap it and center it into place. Just because it's kind of in the way of the circle, I don't want it to go ahead and cut it the wrong way. So we're just going to group it together. Then we're going to ungroup it and select the inside square. Make it just a little bit taller than the current cube. Now we're going to subtract it, admire our work, and place it on top of the sphere. Now for some of the controls, you are going to be using the right button to go ahead and move the screen around, but to be able to move it like up, down, left, and right, you'll use your left button. And for this, we're just centering it into place, and it should kind of snap in there. But then you'll want to go ahead and actually change it to the real true values that you have, unless you already did that in the first place. But here, again, I'm just trying to line it up so you can see how proportionate it needs to be according to what the scope is and your GoPro. And again, just using that right button to go ahead and click on the screen and just kind of move it around so that way you can kind of see where you're going. Now that everything's been settled the way that we need to, size-wise, position-wise, the only concern that we have now are those gaps on the sides between the mounts. This will allow in some light, and we really don't want to allow any kind of light. So what we're doing is that we're duplicating the frame that goes to the GoPro, so that way we can create that sphere, or anything that you want, just to go ahead and cover that up. You could actually make the box as square as you want, or as aesthetically pleasing as you want. But here, we're just going to go ahead and make a donut per se, and just go ahead and place that around it, so that way we can go ahead and get that grip. Grab your selection and seat it around the box. You can go ahead and line it up as evenly as you want, or oddly shaped as you care. Just make sure that it's settled. And then you can go ahead and adjust it to the size that you want, whether it's thin, tall, anything. For this one, I just went ahead and kind of evened it up and just made that the donut went ahead and actually was touching all four corners of the square. Just made it a little more aesthetically pleasing for me. But we're going to actually be adjusting that height in a little bit. But here we're going to go ahead and start removing the pieces that we do not need and place them on our current one. So we're wanting to remove that square so that way we can cut out all the pieces here. So once you've got what you selected, hit subtract, and now that has been removed. We want to keep the outside edges, so we're just going to click the inside of that donut, but make sure that everything else is not selected, or the cropping will take away what you do not want. Once the extra piece has been removed, we're going to want to group these together to keep them all in place. Change your angle and go ahead and grab the selection. Place it around the current square. Settle it in. Now, one thing that you'll want to keep in mind with this is because it does go past the current cylinder, it is going to probably eventually start hitting the scope. If you can see the little highlighted selection right there, that's just showing the overhang that is currently going through the cylinder and may be affecting the lens itself. So we are going to want to go ahead and remove that, and we'll show you real quick exactly how much overhang we are dealing with, and we're going to go under View and under X-Ray. Now, once you've selected specific pieces, you can exactly see where it is overhanging and by how much. And that, again, it can be enough that it affects how your camera is working with the scope and the distance and whatnot. So we're going to need to go ahead and remove that. So we're just going to go ahead and isolate the part that we are working on and go under the edit function where it has split, and you'll see a green box that has now sliced our piece. But don't despair, we can be able to adjust that to any height that we want. And once you've chosen the height that you desire, you'll want to make sure that you're keeping the selection that you need, either up or down or both, and then go ahead and hit OK. Once that is selected, as you can see, it is now much more flush, and it's not going to be affecting our cylinder, and you can go ahead and settle it in place. Once you've concluded your project, you'll probably want to just go ahead and group it together and then save it. I like to save mine in the program under 3MF. That just allows me to go back to edit it really easily. But if you're ready to print it, test it out, just go ahead and save it as an STL format, which is what your 3D printer slicer can read, and then just go from there and printing out what you need.